Welcome, everybody, to this edition of Beers with Bill. It's my pleasure to welcome back Matt Boismier from Farm League. Matt, welcome back to the show.
Hello, everybody. How you doing?
Doing good. We're going to start with Bob Father tonight, eh?
Yes, we're going to start with Bob Father, which is a beer we're all super proud of at the brewery. I think Mike, our brewmaster, calls it his favorite beer we've made thus far, which is pretty cool for a guy that's hyper analytical of himself, but of all his beers that he makes, and maybe not others. Not a bad trait in a brewer, but not always the most fun. But he's pretty proud of this one. So yeah, it's a cool one to start off.
Yeah. I like the label.
Mm-hmm.
Going to see if I can get it in the right spot. Yeah, there.
Yeah, there's a fun story to this beer. So the Bob Father is a collaboration brew we did with Bob Latimer, who is a great friend of ours from Hops Connect. So Hops Connect is a one of the bigger, not hops producers, but also hops sellers in Canada. So we use their Sasquatch hops, which is Canada's first proprietary hop grown in Canadian soil and only in Canadian soil. But the story goes back to Mike, our brewmaster, and I attending the Canadian Beer Awards in Alberta this past May. We were there, and the Hops Connect folks were a big sponsor of the event and had a big party. We were there and hanging out with Bob, who's our local rep for Hops Connect, and we were chatting and having beers at the big party. And beers kept going, and we cooked up a fun collaboration idea where instead of doing his delivery day one day, he'd come into the brewery, brew a beer with us, and then when it was ready to be packaged, at the time we were still doing all packaging by hand labeling and everything. He committed to doing it all himself because he wanted the beer to be as much a part of him as possible. So we came up with a cream ale because we wanted a beer that would use Sasquatch hops well. The Sasquatch hops are, it's an earthy style hop that wouldn't necessarily lend well to, a big bold IPA or pale ale or something super juicy. We wanted to make sure it was something that, connected well with the hop itself and treated it correctly and brought up the correct flavors. We hadn't done a cream ale. We love those styles of beer. Smooth, kind of snappy, crisp, kind of, the things we like to drink more often. And then came up with a fun name with being Bob, the Bob Father. If you can see the date code on it, it says, "We'll make you a beer you can't refuse," as a little extra nod to the movie. So hope you enjoy that one. We love it. It's a cool beer. It was a fun time. It's a fun story. And yeah, it's been going quite well and is soon to be gone.
That's good. That's interesting. Why the marionette strings?
So if you look at, I'm not sure if it's the movie poster or the DVD cover, but the Godfather movie or series has strings and then the Godfather. So it's not a complete ripoff, but inspired.
But I missed that whole connection.
Yeah,
I didn't watch The Godfather when it first came out, so.
Yeah. No, we try to be with the seasonal beers, collaborations, one-offs, a little funny with them as much as possible. Usually something kind of pop culture or funny or something we kind of enjoy. So with Bob, the Bob Father, it just made sense.
Absolutely, I get the thing now. It didn't, like I said. Movies are not my thing, so I didn't get the connection to begin with.
Hey, this is a beer talk at the end of the day.
Yeah. So now that we're almost through summer, what was it like to actually have what would be almost a normal summer this year?
Well, it was a bit of a wild ride. There's no doubt about that. As you folks know, whoever was involved in the last chat we had, and whoever's been kind of following the brewery since we opened up last September, we've been essentially a year But within that first year, whatever it was, it's hard to remember, wherever November, December through till February, March was kind of not exactly, peak season for breweries being open or selling the bars and restaurants and things like that. But as you said, we kind of got into summer and had somewhat of a sense of normality, and actually were able to go out and do what we like doing, which is making beer and selling beer. And the more beer you sell, the more you can make and make cool things. So we really dug into doing a ton of one-off and seasonal beers to make sure we always have the fridge stocked with something new and different. We were basically doing almost weekly to bi-weekly releases with, smaller batches. We were able to temper down our system from a 20 barrel, which is what one normal brew would be, down to about 15, finding the right level of where the jackets were in the brew house and making sure it's still efficient, but brewing a little bit less beer. So we're able to do smaller batches and turn them over quicker. We did a lot of fun events in the brewery. I mean, it was pretty awesome to be able to do our first festival like we did in June. We did Mellow Fest. So we had 10 different beer vendors from, somewhat local, not hyper local, but, around Southern Ontario. Some food trucks, 3 nights of live music. And it was just kind of like the pinnacle of everything we worked for and kind of waited for all coming through at one time, which was pretty special. It just kind of continued that on, doing some fun collaboration beers with different either musicians, different breweries, or different companies, and just kind of weathered the storm, getting through into the tail end of summer now, being happy with the results of the beers and the reception of them, and obviously some ups and downs as per usual, whether it be something going down in the brewery or something not showing up on time, but it was really what we hoped for the past couple months. So we're just excited to keep on trucking along,
It's true. That's what everyone's doing right now.
Mm-hmm.
What was your favorite event?
Favorite event was definitely the second night. Probably the second night. Mellowfest was super fun overall. However, I worked the third night for the whole time, so for the festival and for the show. But for the first 2 nights, the first night was opened by a local musician named Eric Bolton, his band Sly Harry, I think they're called. And then the headliner was Boy Golden, who's an up and coming musician out of Winnipeg, Manitoba, where I used to live for a short stint. Then the second night was a fellow named Jeremy Albino. Both those nights were amazing. I wasn't working. I was at the brewery. I was having a good time, taking in the music, taking in, the time and the people and everything. It was busy. It was full. No one was too rowdy. No bad things happened. So overall, those 2 nights, you can call them one event specifically, was probably the kind of peak of the summer for me.
That's great. Eric's been on the show before, Mr. Bolton.
Mm-hmm.
So he's quite the fixture in downtown.
Yeah, he is. He's definitely a local legend in Cambridge. There's no doubt about that.
He's worked hard.
For sure.
He's worked hard. Did you guys do any of the beer festivals outside?
I don't. No, not really. I'm trying to think. We might have done 1 or 2 smaller things around town, but basically once summer hit, we looked at the festivals that we were either invited to or that are kind of the staple things throughout the summer, and just decided we didn't really have the staff or time for it. We're still a pretty small team. Our tap room was open. Us, Colin, Mike, myself, as the founders, had done 6 to 7 days a week for the prior 6 months or so, trying to get things up and running. So it looked like a daunting task to take the beer festivals on. So there might have been 1 or 2 small ones we did. I think we did the I Heart Beer at Bingaman's, which wasn't small. It was quite big, but it was run by a friend of ours. And I think we did Taco Fest in downtown Kitchener because we were hooked up with the White Rabbit, who's friends in an account of ours, and they wanted to pair their tacos with one of our beers. I think those might have been the only 2, but yeah, it just seemed like a little too much too soon to try and staff them. And if we wanted to do it, we wanted to do it right. and investing in the event materials wasn't at the top end of the priority list. But coming into winter, I mean, there's some great Christmas and winter things that, you know, probably are indoors and take a little bit less off your plate in terms of transportation and equipment. And then leading into next spring and summer, I think we'll probably put our foot down, be a bit more of a part of the local.
Makes sense. What's up and coming next?
Next, the biggest thing we have next, actually, there's a bunch of stuff. We have our Oktoberfest party on Saturday. So it's called Galt's Oktoberfest. We're doing, you know, German and Oktoberfest themed live music. We have giant pretzels and stuff like that. We have everyone that comes in gets a 24-ounce Stein with our Sudsy logo on it, but he has lederhosen on, so it's very cute. We're doing our release of our Oktoberfest beer. We have it in a cask, so we're doing cask tapping as well. So Saturday is going to be a super fun evening doing all sorts of Oktoberfest things. Our fest beer, we actually partnered up with KW Oktoberfest to do a legitimate collaboration with them. So it is a true collaborative and partnership beer with KW Oktoberfest for our fest beer. So that should be getting around town to all the different locations that will be hopefully having Oktoberfest parties. It's going to be available at the downtown Kitchener area among some other bars and restaurants and things like that. And then we have Festive Falls, which is another music style event that we're putting on not next week, but the week after. So that's another 3 nights of music. We're not doing the festival out front of the brewery this time around, but just 3 different nights of music, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So we have the Sadies on Thursday. We have Tokyo Police Club on Friday, and then we have the Dreamboats on Saturday. Tickets have moved really well. Tokyo Police Club is sold out, but it's shaping up to be a fun 3 nights of live music and some good beer. Those are the two big things on the close horizon.
Yep. How are sales to bars and restaurants going?
Things have gone pretty well. I mean, I've definitely seen some differences from before COVID times. As when I worked at Collective Arts, I had the same territory as, you know, where we call home, Tri-Cities extended kind of area. And what I've noticed is some bars and restaurants doing really, really well, and then others being quite slow instead of like kind of a medium level to high low with everyone. There's a bit of a drastic difference through a lot of them. And I'm not sure if that's the people going in that are, you know, have gone back to maybe a domestic or a cheaper beer, or the people that, you know, buy certain things are flocking to only a specific few areas. But I find that bar sales have gone well. We haven't had too much trouble connecting with people and getting them to give the beer a try on rotation at the very least. But I do find some places, you know, extremely more popular with craft, and other places kind of going back to, you know, maybe a few years ago when they were selling just primarily domestic beer. But overall, people have been great. I know it's, you know, a risk taking on new, new suppliers right after everyone's just getting their shit together again. So overall, it's been nice. Been meeting with a lot of nice new people. Beer's been flowing, and, you know, just trying to get around to the places that enjoy craft local beer and kind of want to do things that way, and just connect with them and not push too hard or too crazy, but just kind of go with the flow and do what feels right with, you know, the different licensees.
You're still doing all the sales?
I'm doing all the sales, yeah. For the most part, a little bit of help here and there, but it's predominantly me. Not delivering everything anymore myself, which has been really nice. We bought a little van, a little Nissan NV200 that can fit more kegs than it's worth in there. But our a fellow Derek, who's our kind of packaging coordinator, I suppose you could say, he does most of the canning line, shrink wrapping, labeling, things like that, is also taken on deliveries 2 or 3 times a week to get most of that off my plate. So selling yes, delivering no, which is the perfect combination for me.
That's a nice change for you, though, not having to do
Absolutely,
both.
absolutely. I had to. My poor little Ford Fusion could only take so many kegs, and we had to say goodbye to that vehicle recently. So it's nice that I won't have to put something else through that again.
I hear you on that.
Mhm.
Mostly kegs, or are you getting a mix of kegs and cans?
I would say it is 80% kegs now. There was a span of time there where cans came back in a big way, kind of during lockdowns, towards the end of lockdowns, when people still had the draft systems mostly shut down. It was a lot less of indoor dining, a lot more takeout. Um, Still a lot of cans for the places you'd expect, being the bottle shop style places, the takeout beer, the non LCBO beer store, beer fine places, predominantly run on cans, of course, and then your classic pubs, your kind of draft houses have seemingly gone fully back to operation from before. So predominantly kegs and licensees, but definitely the certain ones that demand cans have been doing really well with that stuff. And it's been nice to see that the bottle shop style, cafe, bar, restaurant, whatever you want to call it, have held on pretty well and have a wealth of cool different beers that normally you can't find without them.
Well, that's good, because that was going to be my next question. How are the bottle shops doing? Because like with everything changing.
Yeah,
So,
they seem to be doing well. I'm sure some better than others. I know a lot of places that were something specific that pivoted towards bottle shop in the short term and still do a little bit of it have definitely slowed down and kind of stopped ordering, or maybe they're just doing a couple staples. But the ones that went, full force into it and built, their business around that bottle shop style thing. For me, from what I've seen, I've kept going strong and doing a good job. So it's awesome. It's a really cool change of pace and a cool thing for smaller beer, wine, cider makers to be a part of and showcase their products in an area that you don't need to really go through these long bureaucratical processes to get some wide range on your beer in the province.
that's very true. Jen's curious if you're going to bring the black IPA back.
Yeah, I think we definitely will. Um, that one's definitely on the list for some time in the winter. Everything's pretty well planned out for the fall, but that one was definitely a bit of a favorite at the brewery and did quite well for us. So I see no reason why not to do a version 2 of the Lauer Black IPA and bring that back come dead of winter or just before.
That's true. We're going to do the wheat ale next.
Yeah, let's do the Big Good, which is I love, but the Hopfenweizen or hoppy wheat beer style of beer, I think is super cool and has somewhat of a place in my past. So it's I'll tell that story when Mike gets back there.
Nice aroma.
Oh yeah, it's punchy. Those hops are definitely there.
Oh yeah.
It's Enigma and Mosaic, I believe. So some big bright flavors coming through there. A little bit of dankness, but yeah, you can definitely catch the big juicy IPA, slap in the face, and then settles out nicely with a smoother banana-y kind of German style wheat beer coming through there. So what I love so much about this beer, or why we kind of decided to do it, during the summertime, we put out a beer called What Feeling Good Feels Like, which was our take on a classic German Hefeweizen, which did very well. I love German Hefeweizens, and we definitely wanted to make that beer again. But what we wanted to do was make it and split it into 2 batches, do one of the German Hefeweizen, the normal style and take the other one and heavily dry hop it and see how it goes. But back when I first started in the beverage industry, I worked at a place. It was a startup company in Toronto. At the time, it was called Iconic Brewing, and we also had a beer agency. So we imported at the time a German beer called Weinstefan and a Dutch beer. Yeah, it is Dutch, called La Trappe. And when we were working with Weinstefan, they did a collaboration with Sierra Nevada, and they took their classic German Hefeweizen, which is the oldest and, in my opinion, the best in the world, and they mashed it up with Sierra Nevada, who obviously is famous for their pale ale. And then they kind of brewed somewhat of a hoppy style wheat beer together called Braupact, and we got a pallet of it when I was working for that agency, and I thought it was the coolest thing at the time ever. So having an opportunity to kind of make something like that in our own way was awesome. I think it turned out well. Definitely flavorful, definitely weedy. So it's what you would expect after trying the style.
Now, when we're done, I'm going to take this down to my wife in her studio because that's the style of beer she likes to drink.
Awesome, that's amazing.
And I rarely ever able to find one for her.
Yeah, something about the body of the wheat beer is it just something else completely on the finish, but the hops give it the aroma, upfront flavor, but a true low bitterness with the wheat finishing.
Derek's curious. 5441879 on the side of the can.
Is that right on the can itself? Oh, yeah, that's an excise number.
Okay, that's what he thought, but he's just checking.
Yeah, it's one of those things that I imagine is the excise number and is a requirement for labeling these days.
Yeah.
There's also, if you ever see a can, sometimes you'll notice that each can has a specific number on it too. Not from us, from the can manufacturer, so I wasn't sure if that was
it. Yeah. How are you finding supply chain? Prices have gone up.
Yeah.
Has the supply chain actually mellowed out a little bit?
Definitely prices have gone up. There's no doubt about that. Each bag of malt is, a couple more bucks. Hops are definitely up. I mean, everything's up. There's no denying it. In terms of supply chain, other than a couple times with cans and lids, and a couple times with boxes, we've been pretty okay. We've been able to get our ingredients for beer. We've been able to get the chemicals that support our boiler and our glycol chiller and everything like that. So we've kind of come in, and the times that we've needed stuff, they've been available. But that definitely doesn't mean the price hasn't gone up, across the board. So that's something that we've kind of been battling with, finding the right price for our beer to remain profitable, but still have, affordable and approachable beer, which was kind of the goal from the get-go, not to have things that's outrageously expensive, but still, nice. So, it's been a bit of a battle with rising prices, but luckily enough, we didn't feel a huge impact from, out of stocks or supply chain slowdowns or things like
that. Yep. So what are sort of the one or two things that you're tackling at this moment?
So right now, there's a number of things we're kind of trying to do, but recently we actually did get an LCBO listing for our lager. So the Farm Holler lager is listed in LCBOs as a full-time listing. It's on us to approach the stores we want and pitch them on a listing for the beer. So that came through a couple months ago, and we've just been trying to kind of slowly inch our way into that and find kind of the right stores and the right places to pitch the beer. Within that, you also get the ability to sell in grocery stores, which is something that we've been looking into seriously, but haven't executed yet. You know, being through the industry for quite some time, there's the right places to sell and the wrong places to sell when you're so early, and we don't want to go everywhere all at once just for the sake of doing it. So just, within getting an LCBO listing, which is great because, you can showcase your product across the province in somewhat of a meaningful way, not kind of overdoing it and a beer showing up in Oshawa and no one knowing what the heck it is. But, inching out kind of with a purpose to make sure that people that want to see our brand or want to give the beer a try have an opportunity to, but not spreading ourselves too thin and dropping the ball on other things. And then starting to make a decision whether we want to approach grocery stores. I've had, some problems in the past with craft beer grocery stores being somewhat, old code and not really shuffling around enough. There's a lager, which isn't the hugest concern, but just making sure that, we do it the right way if we're going to do it, and not kind of neglecting, how we first started things with our retail store and our local licensees, but using it as an advantage to get the brand, where we want it to be.
How do you decide?
I guess it's a balance of like a need of revenue gain versus, the work it would take to get it in certain stores, or, the want of the product itself. You go around to some different stores or some different areas and see what sells well, what people want. And, if it makes sense, you take a shot at it, or, you do these things and see how they roll for the first couple of months. And, no one's stopping you from, continuing on with a specific store area or not. So I think the first thing that drives it is wanting to get, the beer around the province in more places and showing people the product. It also helps with sales and revenue, having the beer in somewhat of a big box retailer or whatever you call it, as well as brand recognition. But deciding where you go, I think, is just for what kind of feels right for people that, know and want the beer, and where you kind of want to test out. So a non-scientific way of saying somewhat of a crapshoot, but doing your best.
Well, that's actually true in a lot of branding. It's a bit of a crapshoot.
Yeah. I mean, you got to try to see what happens, and I'd just say being thoughtful about when things are working or not working, and just that's
true. Did you change your labeling to get it into the LCBO?
The labeling?
Yeah. Did you modify the label?
So I'm trying to think of when we last spoke whether we had this on the side of the can or not, because we tried to introduce the regulated labeling on our core brands pretty early, just so it was already done and it's there. But to have a beer in either LCBO, grocery, beer store, et cetera, there are labeling requirements, which we did add to the beer at some point. I'm just not sure if it was before or after last time we talked, but it is just on the core brands. It's not on the one-off or seasonal brands. And I think we just did that. So it's done, it's set, it's ready. We don't need to redesign if we ever decide to make other applications.
Okay. I'm curious the thought process on that, because my wife pointed something out when we were in Nova Scotia, and she was looking for a particular beer, and we were looking at the liquor store in Nova Scotia we were in had 4 bays of craft beer in coolers, which was phenomenal, because usually that's not the way it is. And a lot of the beer just got lost.
Yeah.
Because it kind of all blended into each other, because it all looked the same, but the branding didn't stand out.
Yeah. So when you mean you're curious in how we decide the branding itself, not to do with the legal requirements, obviously, but when we look at the can design for our core beers, which would be the ones that would find their way onto LCBO shelves at some point or another, I've always liked a classic, simple branding. As I mentioned before, working at Collective, it was the exact opposite of that, in a good way. I thought very loud, very fun, very artistic branding. Did very, very well. And I think they do it for a purpose. But you look across the board now, and most things have gone that route. Most things have gone the crafty, loud, eccentric labeling style. So when we looked at this, I just wanted to be clean, crisp, and kind of classic and not loud. Because if you put something simple against a lot of, loud things, the simple one's the one that stands out, and vice versa. So I like to look at things like that. I think it suits us and our brand, and it happens to be kind of the opposite of what would get lost among the sea of other eccentric looking craft beers. So going the simple route seemed to be something that would for me stand out a little bit more, actually.
So you've got the fall lineup of beers you're going to make all pretty well worked out, which I can understand with supply issues and everything. You'd want to have that pretty well put to bed, and you probably got a lot of the winter stuff in the works now.
For the most part, like we've decided on the styles we want to tackle in the winter, and the ones that we want to see kind of at some point fall. I mean, the fest beer is in the tank and getting kegged tomorrow. We have a red ale. We're finally making a red ale for all the folks that come into our tap room asking for a red, which is kind of a different red. We did another wet hop brew this year on Hop Harvest. We got a bunch of hops from Good Lot in Caledon, chopped down a bunch. We were lucky enough to grab a bunch of fresh hops from them on Hop Harvest Day, brought it down to the brewery, and then we did a community brew day. So any doors were open. Anyone that wanted to come in and pick hops and join in on the brewing fun that day was welcome to come in and have a couple pints on us and pick away at the hops, because it's quite the task once you get all the vines there and you're, slowly by hand picking all the hops off there. So we're turning that beer into a red ale. It's going to be called, I think it's just going to be called Galt Red. Nothing crazy with that one, just something to represent, our area, what people have been asking for, and the people that came in and picked the hops with us. So that's a couple weeks away. Red ale in the fall. We're doing another pale ale, but not quite as bright and summery. A little toned down is going to be in a couple weeks as well. We're not doing any pumpkin beers this fall. Getting a lot of questions about the pumpkin beers. Didn't do that. Get a lot of comments about pumpkin beers, but not quite my style. So maybe we'll hold off until eventually they break us down into pumpkin beer territory, but I hope not. We'll see.
You mean that everyone's going to have to give you a little bit of a push to do that, eh?
I mean, it's Mike doesn't like them. I don't like them. They're definitely seasonal. I feel like at one point they were solid, but it's become pretty gimmicky, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, there's a lot of fun gimmicky things to beer. I just think like we're just kind of, I don't know, we just don't want to do it. And then it becomes kind of a thing, and you're just like, screw it. Like, we're sticking with our guns, and we'll drink other folks' pumpkin beers, or if there's such demand, we can bring in a guest tap. But I feel like we've just had, too many things swirling around and too many ideas to worry too much about that. But I do think it's funny the folks that are full on pumpkin as soon as late September hits.
I totally understand that. I'm more curious, what's the process that you guys go through when you decide like what style of beer you're going to do?
It kind of comes in waves a little bit. Like Mike Cullen and I get together pretty well every day in the morning for a while, just to kind of talk around ideas or go over anything that's, going on that needs to be addressed. But within that, we're just kind of always brainstorming on our own or together. And we have classically a giant whiteboard in the brewery where, we either write down some fun ideas or sit there together and kind of go over some things. I mean, there's a bit of looking at trends and what people have been drinking and what people like and want to see, a bit of inspiration from either our past or things we've tried and really enjoyed, or just trying to be, innovative in whatever way we can and kind of tie that all in together in a beer that's going to be fun. When we look across for different like beer releases, if it's going to be something that's, the smallest we can make it, single run, just have fun with it. The stakes aren't, there in such a degree. You can kind of keg a couple, can some, hopefully it's good. It turns out well. And, it's something fun and interesting. Folks would normally buy it. And, you're not really stuck with a crazy amount of beer. We start scaling that up into something that we want around for the season. A little bit more thought has to go into how's it going to move and where, because we have made beer and been caught with tons of beer that didn't move, and not wanting to be dealing with that for too long. And then implementing a core brand is something that we really think there's either a gap in our portfolio or something that the craft beer market really demands. For instance, we're going to be adding a wheat beer to the core portfolio that's going to be available all year round. It's going to be some sort of a rendition on the What Feeling Good Feels Like German Hefeweizen, so that we're going to start making a full-time product. And that's because you just don't really see a ton of good local craft wheat beers. I mean, Side Launch Wheat was the only one anyone saw for the longest time. And it still kicks around for a brand that you don't really see people from too much. So people are drinking it. When we've made it, it's gone quickly. So I think it's a style that, isn't seen too much, but there is a demand for. So that works for a core beer. Doing something that's like the Black IPA for the winter time, I feel like is fun, is interesting, is tasty, and can last for a full season. And then doing something like a silly sour or whatever, you can really shrink in on that really small timeline and just get that, in and out as quickly as possible. But mostly just brainstorming, hanging out with the team at the brewery, asking what people like, asking what people, have seen, want to see, listen to our customers. All that kind of goes into the decision making for making a beer, but try to not take it too seriously, have fun with it for the most part, and then kind of whittle down to a little bit more nuance when you're looking at stuff that's going to be around for a little bit longer.
Jen's curious what you feel is the most innovative or most fun beer that you guys have made.
That is a good question, because in my mind, we've done a little bit of that, but we haven't done a ton of like super wacky stuff. It depends on how you really think of innovative and fun. If you think of it as kind of like, marshmallow, graham cracker, raspberry puree, double IPA or something like that, of course, that's like super out of the box and wild, which we haven't really, gone down that route. In some part due to our system being bigger and not really having the capabilities of doing things super small batch. And in some part because we kind of want to make what we like and what we believe in. But in terms of innovative, I think the hoppy wheat beer is pretty fun. I wouldn't call it necessarily innovative because it's been done. But it's not something you see a lot, and we did put some thought into doing it, and I think it turned out great. And it's something that, we already almost sold out of kegs in the first week of releasing the beer because everyone's like, oh, shoot, I haven't seen that before. I haven't seen it in a long time. So that was a pretty cool one to put into the works. The Black IPA, when we made it, I know a lot of Black IPAs ended up coming out last year, but I hadn't seen them in forever. And that one was kind of a shot in the dark, no pun intended, to make, and it turned out being kind of cool and unique. And then for fun, just all the collaboration beers are always so fun. Whether it be, we did some larger scale collaborations with some bands this year. I think the most fun one being the Blood Orange dry hop lager that we made, which I guess is a little bit interesting. We did a dry hop lager. I don't remember the hops that we dry hopped it with specifically, but some floral kind of lemony notes. We did a bunch of blood orange puree in that. We made that with the band Mount Joy, and they actually served that at the History venue in Toronto, which is a newer music venue, and we were able to go to the show and have a lot of fun. So that might have been the most fun, somewhat innovative. But I think when you look at our beers, a lot of them are, what we like, what we're inspired by. They're not always the most wacky, but I think a well thought out, fun beer would be something like the Blood Orange with a cool band, or something like the Hoppy Wheat beer that I pulled some things from our past together to have some fun with. Yeah. So how did the Greta Van Fleet collab come about? Pretty big band. Yeah, they're a huge band um, in the US and I guess, across Canada as well. It was super crazy. So Colin, who's one of my business partners, worked at Live Nation for quite a while before starting the business with me. He did tours with artists. He did like promotions. He was a band manager for quite some time, so he knows a good shake of the people in the industry. Turns out, much like beer, it's a smaller industry than you'd imagine, and there's knowing the right handful of people can usually lead you to different bands and avenues and things like that. The reason that came about is because he was in California and they had done a collaboration beer with a local brewery. And it was at the show and it was at the brewery and that was it. And it was like, whoa, how can such a big band do such a small collaboration in some capacity? I always thought of things as having to be like massive, and it's like Greta Van Fleet on like a Coors Light can, or the Arkells on a Canadian can, and that's the whole thing. And it's just like, well, that's not really cool. It's just like a can collaboration or a promotional deal or whatever. So truly, we just reached out. Colin knew someone that knew their manager, and they were coming on a Canadian tour for the first time since COVID. And we were like, hey, we've seen you do collabs with smaller breweries in the past when you're doing shows in their region. We're a Canadian brewery. We've done some of these things in the past, and we want to make a cool beer for, your shows in, the one in Toronto, which turned out to, we were able to get some distribution throughout Alberta and Manitoba, but not BC. For the other shows they were playing at. So it was really kind of just a shot, just something that we thought would be fun, something we've seen people do in the US and no one really has done it in Canada. A lot of the bigger collaborations in Canada go to the LCBO for a season or forever, et cetera, et cetera. So we wanted something that was kind of self-contained, and they turned out to be the ones that wanted to do it. So overall, it was a pretty cool experience getting beer in other provinces and working with some kind of bigger companies. Also, they did buy 12 cases of it for the show at the Scotiabank Arena. They wouldn't buy any more than 12 cases of it because it's a Molson operated facility, I suppose. So all 12 cases sold out before the opener even went on. But I do believe it might be the only, if not one of the only true solo-owned local craft breweries that have sold a beer in there for a concert, which was pretty cool.
Wow.
And then how the band was involved itself was mainly in the design and over some virtual meetings about what they wanted to make, what beer they thought kind of suited what they wanted to do, and it's kind of paired in with their new album, which is called Dreams and Gold. So they wanted something that was like a gold style ale or something that could kind of flow along with the name of the album. So a lot of just kind of the planning on the beer, the name of the beer itself, and the design. And then they did have a hand in promotion, obviously, of the beer socially and helping us get it into some music venues that they were playing. So not as much in the brewing, more so in the, design and idea side of things. But yeah, unfortunately, the schedule didn't permit for people to come by for the brew day, which would have been pretty cool. But unfortunately, beer takes some time to get over.
Yeah. Third stone fruit from the sun.
Yes. Our most recent little sour, which is a peach plum apricot.
Yeah.
Trippy beer. So this beer is probably going to be the last of our kind of summer seasonal sours based on like a common sour base, kettle sour base that we brewed. We originally brewed for a beer called Cosmic Country, which is a dry hop sour that we made when we first opened up. We ended up using that recipe as a base and did a big kettle sour brew of this kind of base sour that a lot of people do for their different iterations of sour beers, and then segmented that off to make different rotational fruit kind of iterations of it. This one, and as if you've had our sours before, and you can probably tell with this one, we don't make them over sour. We're not looking for a puckeringly sour, super, super acidic brew. There's a place for that, definitely, and those beers can be super, super tasty and refreshing. I think I overdid sours a couple years ago, and they give me heartburn and don't exactly sit well. Mike agreed that he wasn't huge on the insanely acidic style of sours, so we try to pare it down to more of a tart ale, I like to call it, style of beer, being that the beer kind of shines through a little bit more. We have some fruit purees and things in there to give some fruity flavors. And then the sour base itself isn't insanely acidic, but still a nice kind of tart refreshingness to it. So something that's pared down a little bit more nuanced, still some nice flavors, but not that slap in the face sour that some people have come to expect. So, we kind of get the comments being like, oh, is this sour enough, or it needs more fruit, or this and that, which I can agree with in some perspective, but at the same time, we kind of want something to be just a little bit more chill sometimes. If the last one was a raspberry, it's a little bit light on the raspberry, maybe, but again, we didn't want it, overwhelming. We got a lot of people asking for it to have more raspberry in it, which I totally agree. But it's kind of a different vision for a sour and beer, and I kind of dig it because you can, enjoy more than a flight glass worth.
I find it a patio sour. It'd be a great beer to sit on a hot summer day.
Yep.
And enjoy on a patio. Which is what
it needs to be. About.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to force me to think now about what I want to ask you.
No, that's okay. Take your time, my friend. Take your time. I can ramble on about some stuff. Oh, here we go. Which, if any, of the most recent beer trends would you like to stick around? That's a great question. Wow. Of the beer trends that have been so popular recently, I can think of. I mean, we got the slushy sours and slushy beers. We have, this isn't really a new trend, but it's definitely come back in a big way. Is the eccentric pastry stouts, I suppose. And then moving into the triple to quadruple IPAs range have been ones I've seen quite a bit. I guess the one I'd probably most like to see stick around the crazy IPAs are fun. I get a kick out of those, and I think there's some breweries that have been able to find a bunch of success with that stuff. I wouldn't say, I'm always the biggest fan of it, but I can definitely get behind a couple of them, especially if you're looking to blast off that night. They can definitely put you in that mode. The slushy stuff, and I think there's a place for a pastry stout as well. And the slushy stuff is kind of funny, but a little bit dangerous if you forget it in a hot car. But that stuff it's a little too sweet for me, and it's not exactly my taste. So if anything, I'd like to stick around. I'd probably prefer the IPAs out of those three trendy style beers. We might want to make something like that one time. Maybe not. We'll see. And then I'm a big sour fan, so I like the idea of a tart ale. Yeah. So that was kind of our thing. And, sometimes we make stuff that we prefer to our detriment to a degree, but I feel like there's, space for many different things at the table. Not every sour needs to be crazy. Not every IPA needs to be crazy. Lots of good ones are, and you can make other things as well. So just kind of executing a vision on the sour that's a little bit different than other people's, but it's something that we just kind of follow through with, and we'll experiment with other things as well. Yeah, cold IPAs. Yeah, We haven't really made one. We did a dry hop lager, which isn't exactly that style necessarily. I truly haven't seen many of them or dove into them. Cold IPAs, they're definitely around, but I haven't had a chance to really try anything that's like fully committed to that idea. So I'll have to see how that goes and when I can give one a try.
So then along that kind of an idea, I got asked the other day about the hazy IPA.
Yeah.
And when that first came out, someone's, asked me, and I'm like, oh, I think it'll be a couple of years, it'll go away. And that's been more than a couple of years now.
That must be by far still the leading beer in when you look at craft beer. It's got to be by far the beer of the pack, no doubt. I remember when I first saw that style, I was working for that agency. We had started working with a Quebec company that wanted us to bring in a New England style IPA. And I was like, what New England style? Like, what does that mean? And they're like, oh, it means no bitterness. I'm like, isn't the point to have bitterness? Like, I'm missing here. And then, I mean, it makes a lot of sense when you kind of break it down, and it's been a style that's held true. So who knows? Maybe the slushy sour will be the next hazy IPA in 10 years. We'll see.
Yeah, that's true. We'll see. It will definitely be interesting. I like the fact that through COVID, all of a sudden people started making great lagers and pilsners.
One thing that I've definitely been on board with is somewhat of a resurgence of, well-made and well-purposed lagers. It's basically what I stick to drinking for the most part these days. And we try to make different iterations of different lagers from different places. That's just right what I'm into. And I'm sure, everyone's taste shifts around every once in a while, but I've definitely been stoked about that too, Bill. The lagers coming out after COVID, I think maybe people had time to lager in tank. I'm not sure, but they've started coming out and a little bit more and more, which is cool.
Shoot. So that makes me curious. Do you guys do anything to your water when you're making a pilsner or a lager?
We don't. No. So Cambridge has notoriously hard water, which isn't necessarily, the best thing for lagers. People say it might be the best thing for certain lagers. I guess there's a terroir to it to some degree. Some people would use an RO water source and have like perfectly clean distilled water, which is fine. Everything we make in our brewery is all our Cambridge groundwater, I think it is. We just roll with it. So we don't do anything specific to the water. We would have if when we started making beer, there was something specifically off-putting about it or not nice about it, but we found that, there wasn't an insane impact on lager flavor from the water, or if there is, it's something that, we either enjoy or don't detect. So, no, we just use our water the way it comes in. We focus on, long lagering stages in tank and just using the right ingredients the right way. So, although water is arguably the most important ingredient, ours seems to do just fine with it. So I'm glad about that because it was kind of a big debate when we first started up. If there's an issue, what we would do about it. Luckily, thus far, I haven't found any problems with it.
You strip the chlorine out?
Strip the chlorine out.
Do you strip the chlorine out?
Not to my knowledge. I mean, Mike might tell you different. I have no idea, but I'm not thinking. I would have to think there might be a process within that, but I don't think so.
Okay, no,
I've never been asked that before. I could be wrong. I mean, Mike would be the guy to 100% denote that, but
next time I stop and visit you, I'll visit Mike and ask him.
Yeah, holler at Mike and he'll let you know for sure.
So that would bring me to my sort of what I would think my last question. Is there any question, because you've done numerous interviews, is there any question you wish people would ask that they haven't asked?
I mean, I guess how everyone's doing. I don't know. Like we've all gone through a crazy time and are still working hard to make ends meet. And a lot of things have gone right and a lot of things have gone wrong. But I guess just how everyone's doing in the biz, I guess, because there's so many interesting stories and happenings that have happened this summer or before through lockdowns, and that's really the only thing I can think of off the top of my head. But I guess you asked that when we first started. I'm just trying to think if there's anything specific here. Yeah, I don't know, Bill. That's a good question. I can't really think of anything too specific that I've kind of noted down that people haven't asked us. But I think it's important that at the end of the day we're making beer, but everyone's doing all right and everyone's happy and still having fun. You know what I mean? That's a big part of it. Are we still having fun? That's a nice question. And the answer is luckily yes. We're still having a good time and cruising along.
Not always easy, is it?
No, it's not always easy. A lot of tough things, but at some point you just got to roll with the punches. Be okay with whatever goes on. Remember that it's just beer and enjoy the process.
And then, of course, there's this little dialogue going over there. Is it true that Cambridge passed a bylaw that every brewery, when it opened, had to have a mat working for it?
Yeah. Yep. That's that was well known coming into the process. I think it was the main reason why I was put in the position I am. So luckily, thanks mom and dad for naming me Matt. Led me to many brewery opportunities, mainly not many other things, but typically bearded mats do well in the industry. So I took that and ran with it.
Matt, thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule and sharing your story with us here again tonight. We truly appreciate you giving us that gift of time.
Yeah, no worries at all. It's it's perfect timing, just getting through summer, getting up to fall. Lots of fun things on the horizon. So appreciate the chat. Appreciate the questions from everyone. Hope everyone enjoyed the beer. And plenty more to come, I suppose. Whoever's in the area, please feel free to stop by and give me a holler if I'm kicking around. And check out our events. Instagram page is the best way to see what we're up to, and lots of fun things always on the go. So yeah.